Hello everyone, it's been a good writing week this week. I'm currently on 26,122 words and going strong. I'm hoping to get my first draft completely finished by Easter so that then I can work on the editing and so on and hopefully get it published before the end of this year. At the moment that's looking pretty likely. But today I'm going to be talking about world building because I have started outlining a new fantasy series that I want to be working on after I finish this project. I've started outlining it now because it means that when I get a little bit stuck with my current project, I can outline this other one, and then that motivates me to finish my current project so that I can move on to this one. As well as this, I've been watching the Brandon Sanderson lectures, and in particular his advice on world building is really useful. So I thought I'd break it down for you today. Obviously this stuff is just stuff to put in your toolkit. It's not any hard and fast rule that definitely works for everyone or is the most appropriate for everyone, so just kind of bear that in mind. So the important thing when writing fantasy or sci-fi is that you need to remember your learning curve is that much steeper. The learning curve for the reader in any other genre tends to be fairly straightforward because you're in a world that the audience already knows. You're on planet Earth, the laws of physics apply, etc, etc, etc. Whereas all of these rules can be thrown out of the window when it comes to fantasy and sci-fi. So by building yourself a solid world and building your own set of rules and sticking to them, you create that sense of believability. So the reader will suspend disbelief and immerse themselves in your world, meaning that they're not going to be questioning why certain people can float upside down and some people can't. I'm just going to talk through a couple of things that you can consider when you are world building. The first thing is maps. Lots of fantasy books have maps, and sometimes they are necessary and integral, and sometimes they're just in there as an added bonus. But mapping, even if it doesn't appear in the final draft of your novel, is important for you, especially if you're writing about journeying from place to place. It doesn't have to be a particularly detailed or excellently drawn map, but if you are aware of the land in which you are writing and where everything is in relation to each other, then all of a sudden your world immediately becomes more believable. You do need to check your geography for this stuff, so you need to make sure that your rivers are flowing in the right direction, your mountains are in the right place. I've got my map of Atlantium, so I'm just going to show you that and take you through some of the features that are on it. So this is Atlantium, and there's actually 3 different levels. There's an underwater level, an in the air level, and then a ground level. So it's quite difficult to map out on a single piece of paper. But I've got main place names, I've got where things are in relation to each other, because my characters journey from here up to here and back, and kind of go to various places along the way. So it is really important for me to have this so that I can track how long it would take for them to get places, and what would be the best route. So what would be the most logical route. And by having a map as well, you can really start to think about where people live, how people work, and start to think about different cultures. And that leads me on to the next thing. Once you've got yourself a map, or at least a vague idea of the world in which you are going to be setting your story, that's when you have to think about some of the more cultural aspects of your world. So you need to think about your physical world, and you need to think about the history physically of your world. How did it start out? Where's it going? And if that's relevant to the story. The physical world for me is fairly important, so I've thought about it in quite a bit of detail. But if it's not particularly important to your story, then it's not something you need to spend a lot of time on. And that's something that you need to bear in mind. Think about what is most important to the plot of your story and really focus on those aspects and make them more detailed. Don't think that you have to make a full-scale history for the last 1,000 years with every single little detail covered, because you will never use that in your story and you will end up just world building for 20 years and never writing a page. So other things to consider are politics. Who runs the country or who runs the land? Are there several rulers that all meet up together? Is there political unrest? Is there a dictatorship? Is it a democracy? And what are the more political views? Is it more of a capitalist society? Is it a socialist society? Is it a communist society? Technology, especially for sci-fi, this is the kind of thing that's pretty important. Is technology the same as it is here? Is everything run on electricity but just more advanced? Or do they use a different type of element perhaps to run their technology? How advanced are they? Are they more primitive in other areas? And what is their kind of focus? Is their focus on nanotechnology, biotechnology? What is their future goal as well? Religion and ideology. Does everyone have one united faith? Does everyone have one united belief? Is there unrest because of religion? Is there unrest because there's a certain group of people who believe something different to everyone else? Does their religion affect their day-to-day lives? Does it affect their culture as a result? Which leads on to culture. What are the cultural differences? How are men and women and children treated within the different areas of the land? Is it united or is it separate? And is there unrest because of disagreements regarding culture? Is there a particular animal that they worship? Is there a particular meat that they don't eat? Do they only eat plants that flower in the autumn? Which leads on to time. What are the seasons like? What are the years like? How do people age? How old are people? What's classed as middle age? What's classed as becoming an adult? The amazing thing about fantasy is that a young adult book could be about someone who is 50, but 50 is very young and almost teenage-like in that world. Education. How are people educated? Is education prized? Is intelligence prized? Is it mental intelligence or is it physical strength and aptitude? What is important and what is the purpose of the education in your society? This is more for fantasy, but is there magic? And how does the magic work? Is the magic different? Is it controlled in different ways by different people? Is it something that can be learnt or is it something that you're born with? Is it a blessing and a privilege or is it a curse? Animals. Are there futuristic animals or are there fantastical animals in your world? How do they work? Is there a certain group of people who train them? Are they considered wild animals? Are they antagonistic? Do they fight the people? Or are they on the side of the people? Or are they enslaved by the people? And the characters within that world. Now, especially if you're writing fantasy, family trees might be important to consider. What's the royal line like, if there is a royal line? Or what's the line of the most powerful family in the land? Have they been the most powerful family for 1,000 years? Or is it a fairly new thing? Are family lines important? Are they integral? Class and ethnicity are also important here. Is there some kind of ethnic divide? Is there a class divide? Is that class divide related to ethnicity or is it related to something else? Now that's a lot of things to consider before you even pick up a pen and start to write the book. But by doing this, you can start to think about conflict. And in my last video, I talked about trying to find conflict between things. So if you do this, and if you look at all of these different aspects, there's more opportunity for you to find conflict. Brandon Sanderson recommends choosing about 3 and making them quirky, and then keeping the others relatively similar to modern day Earth. If you try and make everything quirky, the learning curve is too steep and you'll lose your reader very quickly. But if you have something fairly familiar, like the idea of a royal family, then people can grasp that fairly quickly. And then you can add on something quirky to that afterwards. For example, in the series that I'm outlining now, there's 4 very different cultures, but all of those cultures have quirks drawn from different times in history. So women are regarded as very different statuses in different cultures, and that's drawn from different periods of history and the perception of women during those times. History is a great place to pick up ideas for fantasy adventures. Retelling existing stories or true stories in new settings is a perfect way to get yourself a premise. I've used elements of history in all of the cultures that I've created, and I've considered the conflicts between them arising as a result. My main quirk really is magic and how magic works in the world. That's very detailed and I will be explaining that in another video. But by working through this list of features, and even if it is the same as modern day Earth, making sure that I understand that, I've created for myself a far more robust world than I would have otherwise. And there's nothing more frustrating than getting to chapter 14 of your novel and realising that you have a massive plot hole that means you have to start the whole thing again. So I recommend getting some kind of notebook and just scribbling in any ideas you have about the world. And slowly that notebook will build up and some of the ideas may conflict, but then you can work out which ones are going to be better for your plot, because that's why people read your books after all. So that's a little bit of an introduction to world building. I hope this video was useful for you. If it was, then please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to hear more writing tips, chat, and see how my upcoming projects are progressing, then please subscribe. I upload videos every Friday. You can read the first couple of chapters of my current novel Maverick, and you can also read the prologue to Painter of Skies, which is the second book in my Ether fantasy series. That's all linked down below, and that's everything from me for this week. If you want to comment or discuss anything, then please comment below or tweet me at the link below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next week.